Have you ever really looked at the coins in your pocket? I mean, really looked at them. Most of the time, they're just a nuisance, right? They're jangling around, weighing down your pants, making you that person who holds up the line at the grocery store, counting out exact change. But here's the thing. Every single coin is a tiny time capsule. It's a piece of history you can hold in your hand. And when it comes to South African coins, man, what a history it is. We're talking about a story that involves ships, empires, wars, gold rushes, and the long, complicated journey to becoming the nation we are today. It's a story of struggle and triumph, all stamped into little pieces of metal. Think about it. A coin is a government's way of saying, this is us. This is what we value. It's a calling card for a nation. The pictures they put on there, the kings, the queens, the animals, the plants, they aren't just random decorations. They are symbols of power, of identity, of what a country wants the world to see. In South Africa, our coins have shown the faces of British monarchs, the symbols of Boer republics, and now, the vibrant flora and fauna that represent the diversity of our rainbow nation. Following the journey of our coins is like flipping through a photo album of our country's entire life, from its awkward colonial childhood to its complex modern adulthood. This isn't just some dry academic topic for stuffy old guys with magnifying glasses, though I'm sure they love it too. This is a story that connects all of us. If you grew up in South Africa, you remember the feel of a specific coin, maybe the old big penny, or the first time you saw a 5 Rand coin with Nelson Mandela's face on it. These coins are part of our collective memory. For people outside of South Africa, especially in America, our coins might be a mystery, or maybe you only know about a famous one like the Krugerrand, but understanding them is a way to understand the soul of my home country, a place that's as complex and beautiful as the designs on its currency. So, let's take a trip. We're going to dive into this metallic history, starting from a time before coins even existed at the tip of Africa. We'll see how money evolved from trade goods to the shiny discs we know today. We'll meet Dutch traders, British governors, and Boer presidents, all of whom left their mark on our money. We'll talk about the switch from pounds to rands, a move that was way more than just a mathematical change. And we'll uncover why South African coins have become some of the most sought-after collector's items in the world. Get ready, because this is the story of South Africa told one coin at a time. Long before anyone was flipping a coin to make a decision at the Cape of Good Hope, people were already trading. But what do you use for money when there's no money? You use what's valuable. For the indigenous Khoikhoi and San people, and later the Bantu-speaking groups, wealth wasn't about gold or silver. It was about life. It was about cattle. Cows were the original bank account. The more cattle you had, the richer you were. You could use them to trade for other goods, to pay a dowry for marriage. Cattle were the ultimate status symbol. It makes sense, right? A cow gives you milk, it helps you plow fields, and it's a living, walking asset. It's a lot more useful than a shiny rock. When the first European ships, mainly from Portugal, and later the Netherlands, rounded the coast of Africa in the 15th and 16th centuries, they ran into a problem. The local people weren't exactly impressed with their fancy European coins. What good is a Spanish dollar when you can't eat it? So, the sailors had to adapt. They started trading with things the locals actually wanted: iron, copper, and beads, especially beads. These weren't just pretty trinkets, they were a form of currency, a sign of status and wealth that could be worn. It was a classic case of supply and demand. The Europeans had a ton of beads, and the locals had the fresh water, food, and cattle the sailors desperately needed to continue their journey to Asia. Then, in 1652, the Dutch East India Company, or the VOC, set up a permanent settlement at what is now Cape Town. This changed everything. Suddenly, you had a small but growing European-style economy plonked down in the middle of Africa. The VOC brought its own money, of course. They used Dutch guilders, stivers, and all sorts of coins from their vast trading empire, including Spanish reals, pieces of 8, that were famous worldwide. But there was never enough official currency to go around. So, people got creative. They started using a mix of whatever coins they could get their hands on, creating a chaotic but functional monetary system where a coin's value was based on its silver or gold content, not where it came from. This period was all about improvisation. Imagine a market in early Cape Town. One person might be paying with a Dutch guilder, Another, with a Japanese koban, brought in on a trade ship, and someone else might be trying to use an Indian rupee. To make things even more complicated, local authorities would sometimes just cut larger coins into smaller pieces to make change. This was the Wild West of currency. There was no standard. This messy, fascinating mix of local barter and international coins set the stage for South Africa's first official, locally minted currency. But that was still a long way off. For now, money was whatever you and the person you were trading with agreed it was. As the Dutch settlement at the Cape grew, the money situation got even more interesting, and by interesting, I mean complicated. The Dutch East India Company, or VOC, was a global enterprise, so coins from all over the world ended up in Cape Town. You had the Dutch guilder as the official currency, but in reality, people were using Spanish silver dollars, Indian rupees, and even Japanese coins. It was a logistical nightmare. To try and bring some order to the chaos, the local governor would often issue proclamations, setting official exchange rates for all these different coins. They even counterstamped foreign coins with the VOC logo to make them local. It was like putting a sticker on something to claim it's yours. The first attempt at a truly local currency came in the late 18th century. By then, the Cape was facing a massive coin shortage. To solve this, the government took Spanish dollars, which were plentiful, and punched a small centerpiece out of them. The outer part, now looking like a donut, was called a riksdollar, while the little punched-out part was called a skilling. It was brilliant in a way. You instantly created two coins from one. And it kept the silver circulating within the colony, because the cut coins were worth more inside the Cape than their silver value was outside. This was the famous holy dollar and dump, a system also used in other colonies like Australia. Then, in 1795, the British arrived and took control of the Cape from the Dutch, and when a new empire takes over, they bring their money with them. Slowly but surely, British currency, pounds, shillings, and pence began to dominate. At first, the Dutch riksdollar and the British pound existed side by side, which you can imagine was confusing. How many shillings is a riksdollar worth today? The exchange rate could fluctuate, making business a real headache. Finally, in 1825, the British declared their currency as the official legal tender for the entire colony. The riksdollar was phased out, and the era of the pound sterling began in earnest. This move was more than just a change of coins. It was a statement of power. It was the British Empire stamping its authority on southern Africa. For the next century, the coins used in the Cape Colony, and later Natal, would be British coins. You'd see the face of King George IV, then King William IV, and of course the long, long reign of Queen Victoria. These were the exact same coins being used in London, Melbourne, or Toronto. It tied the South African economy directly to the heart of the British Empire, for better or for worse. It was a stable and powerful currency, but it also meant that the region's monetary policy was being decided thousands of miles away. While the British were busy establishing their pounds and shillings in the coastal colonies, another story was unfolding in the interior of South Africa. The Voortrekkers, descendants of the early Dutch settlers, had moved inland to escape British rule and establish their own independent republics. The two most prominent ones were the Zuid-Afrikaanse Republiek, also known as the Transvaal, and the Orange Free State. At first, these fledgling Boer republics used whatever currency they could find, which was mostly British pounds. But a truly independent nation needs its own money. It's a symbol of sovereignty. The big moment came in 1874. The president of the Tsar, Thomas Burgers, decided it was time for the republic to have its own coins. He personally took a batch of local gold to a mint in England and had 837 gold coins struck. These became known as the Burgers' Pond. They looked a lot like the British gold sovereign, but instead of Queen Victoria, they featured the Tsar's coat of arms. Burgers was so proud of them, but many of his deeply religious citizens were not. They called them the Devil's Coins, because they believed the Bible forbade graven images, and a national coat of arms was too close for comfort. Politics, am I right? The real game-changer was the discovery of massive gold deposits in the Witwatersrand in 1886. Suddenly, the poor rural Tsar became the world's largest producer of gold. Now they had the means and the motive to create a full-fledged national currency. In 1892, President Paul Kruger established the National Mint of the Tsar in Pretoria. they started producing a range of coins from the bronze penny to the silver sixpence, shilling, and crown, all the way up to the gold half-pound and pound. These coins, known as the Kruger coins, were beautifully designed and proudly displayed the portrait of the stern-looking, top-hatted President Kruger. The Anglo-Boer War, from 1899 to 1902, brought this era of independent currency to a dramatic halt. When the British forces advanced on Pretoria, the Boers had to get creative. They created veldpond, or field pounds, which were crudely struck gold coins made in a makeshift mint in the remote gold-mining town of Pilgrim's Rest. These were made to pay soldiers and keep the economy going during the war. The most famous of these is the legendary 99 veldpond, overstamped with the number 99 to signify 1899. These coins are incredibly rare and represent the last gasp of the Tsar's independence, a final act of defiance forged in gold. After the war, the Boer republics were gone, and all of South Africa was under the British flag once again. After the Anglo-Boer War, the Union of South Africa was formed in 1910, bringing the former British colonies and Boer republics together under one government within the British Empire. For a while, the country continued to use British sterling, but in 1923, South Africa finally established its own national currency, the South African pound. These coins were identical in size and value to their British counterparts. You had pennies, shillings, and pounds, but they were distinctly South African. They featured the British monarch on the front, as was customary, but the back designs started to showcase local themes like the VOC's famous sailing ship, the Dromedaris. This system of pounds, shillings, and pence was, well, it was a bit of a mess for anyone who likes simple math. There were 12 pence in a shilling and 20 shillings in a pound. That's 240 pence in a pound. Doing any kind of calculation was a headache. By the mid-20th century, many countries around the world were switching to a decimal system, where currency is based on units of 10 and 100. It's just easier. South Africa decided to join the trend. This was a huge deal, a major step in modernizing the country's economy and asserting its own identity, separate from the old British imperial system. The big day was February 14, 1961. It was called D-Day, for Decimal Day. On this day, the South African pound was officially replaced by a new currency, the rand. The name rand came from the Witwatersrand Rand, the gold-rich ridge that had built the country's wealth. The conversion rate was simple. 1 pound became 2 rands. This meant 10 shillings became 1 rand. The new currency was divided into 100 cents, making everything much simpler. The government launched a massive public education campaign, with a friendly cartoon character named Decimal Dan to help people understand the new system. It was a peaceful revolution in everyone's wallet. The new rand coins initially kept some of the old familiarities. The sizes were similar to the old coins they replaced. The new 50-cent coin was the same size as the old 5-shilling coin, for example. They also kept the portrait of Jan van Riebeeck, the first Dutch commander at the Cape, on the front of all the coins, a symbol that was itself controversial and tied to the apartheid government's vision of history. The reverse sides continued to feature iconic South African flora and fauna, like the protea, the blue crane, and the springbok. This was the currency of the Republic of South Africa, a nation that had just left the British Commonwealth and was charting its own, increasingly isolated path. Now we have to talk about the big one, the superstar, the coin that even people who know nothing about coins have heard of, the Krugerrand. In the 1960s, South Africa was producing over 70% of the world's gold, but there was a problem. It was illegal for private citizens, in many countries, including the United States, to own gold bullion. So South Africa's Chamber of Mines came up with a genius idea. What if they turned the gold into a coin? A coin is legal tender, it's money, you're not buying gold bullion, you're just acquiring foreign currency. It was a brilliant loophole. And so in 1967 the first Krugerrand was minted. It was the world's first modern gold bullion coin, designed specifically for investors. It was made to be durable, containing exactly 1 troy ounce of pure gold, with a little bit of copper mixed in to make it harder and give it that distinctive orange-gold color. The design was a nod to South Africa's history. On the front was the same portrait of Paul Kruger from the old Tsar coins, and on the back was a springbok, the country's national animal. The name itself was a combination of Kruger and rand, the unit of currency. It It was an instant masterpiece of marketing. The Krugerrand was a phenomenon. It was an easy, accessible way for the average person to invest in gold. You didn't need to be a millionaire to buy one. By 1980, the Krugerrand accounted for a staggering 90% of the global gold coin market. It was so popular that other countries, like Canada with its maple leaf and America with its gold eagle, rushed to create their own versions to compete. The Krugerrand single-handedly created the modern gold bullion coin market as we know it today. It was a South African invention that changed global finance. It put a piece of the Witwatersrand's wealth into the hands of people all over the world. However, the coin's story is also tied to the politics of the time. As international opposition to apartheid grew in the 1970s and 80s, the Krugerrand became a target of economic sanctions. Many Western countries, including the United States, banned its import. Owning a Krugerrand suddenly became a political statement. The ban caused sales to plummet, but it also made the coins, that were already in circulation, even more famous, or infamous. After the end of apartheid in the 1990s, the sanctions were lifted, and the Krugerrand once again became a popular and respected choice for gold investors worldwide, a symbol of a very different democratic South Africa. After the transition to democracy in 1994, South Africa's coins needed a makeover. The old series, with Jan van Riebeeck on the front, was deeply associated with the apartheid era. A new country needed new symbols, and so, a brand new series of coins was introduced, reflecting the new Rainbow Nation. The most significant change was that instead of one person's face, the coins would celebrate the nation's rich linguistic diversity. South Africa has 11 official languages, now 12, and the new coins would feature the words South Africa written in each of them, rotating through the different denominations each year. It was a small but powerful way of saying, everyone is included. Let's take a look at what's in circulation today. The smaller coins, the 10, 20, and 50-cent pieces, are all made of copper-plated steel. The 10-cent coin features the arum lily, a beautiful and common flower. The 20-cent piece showcases the royal protea, South Africa's national flower, a symbol of beauty and resilience. The 50-cent coin proudly displays the strelitzia, also known as the bird of paradise flower, which is native to the region. These coins celebrate the country's incredible biodiversity, its Fynbos kingdom, which is one of the most diverse floral regions on the planet. They are little reminders of the natural beauty of the land. Moving up, we get to the rand coins. The 1 rand, 2 rand, and 5 rand coins are the workhorses of the currency. The 1 rand coin is nickel-plated copper and features the springbok, the graceful antelope that is the national animal and gives its name to our rugby team. The 2 rand coin, also nickel-plated copper, shows off the kudu, a magnificent large antelope with incredible spiraling horns. Then there's the 5 rand coin, which is our largest circulating coin. It's a bimetallic coin, like the 2 euro coin, with a brass center and a copper nickel ring. It features the wildebeest, or gnu, famous for its massive migrations across the plains of Africa. The designs of these coins have also been updated over the years. A recent series, for example, puts a greater focus on fauna and flora, with the R5 coin now featuring the southern right whale. But perhaps the most beloved coin is the commemorative R5 coin. Since 2008, a special R5 coin was released celebrating the 90th birthday of Nelson Mandela, featuring his smiling face. This was the first time a black person had ever been depicted on a South African coin. It was a hugely symbolic moment. Since then, other commemorative R5 coins have been minted, celebrating 25 years of democracy and other key milestones, turning everyday change into a celebration of our new history. Every country has its rare coins, the ones that make collectors' hearts beat a little faster. But South Africa, with its turbulent history of changing governments and limited mintages, has more than its fair share of numismatic treasures. These coins are valuable, not just for their metal content, but for the stories they tell. They are survivors, witnesses to history. Take, for instance, the aforementioned Burger's Pond from 1874. Only 837 were ever made, and many were probably melted down or lost. Finding one of these today is like finding a golden ticket. It's a direct link to the very first attempt by a Boer republic to create its own gold currency. One of the most famous and sought-after rarities is the 1898 Sammy Marks Tikkie. A tikkie was the colloquial name for the threepence coin. In 1898, the industrialist Sammy Marks, a friend of President Paul Kruger, was given permission to use the national mint for one day to produce a small number of gold threepence coins as souvenirs. Only around 215 of these were ever struck, and they were given out to friends, family, and dignitaries, including the president himself. These tiny gold coins are incredibly rare and command huge prices at auction. Owning one is owning a piece of a personal story from the highest levels of the old Tsar government. The Anglo-Boer War also produced some fascinating rarities. The 1899 Veldpond is a prime example. When the Boers were on the run, they needed to make dies to strike their emergency gold pond. They didn't have the tools to engrave a new date, so they simply took a die from 1898 and punched the number 99 on top of it. This overstamp created a unique and historically significant coin, born out of desperation and ingenuity in the middle of a war. There are also coins from the Tsar period with minting errors, like the famous 1892 double-shaft crown, where the wagon on the coat of arms was mistakenly engraved with 2 shafts instead of 1, a mistake that was quickly corrected, making the error versions incredibly scarce. Even modern coins have their rarities. When the new democratic coins were introduced in 1994, there were some transitional and error coins that are highly prized by collectors. For example, some coins were accidentally struck on the wrong metal planchets, or had mismatched obverse and reverse sides. More recently, commemorative coin sets, like the one celebrating Nelson Mandela's life, or the 2010 FIFA World Cup held in South Africa, are produced in limited numbers. These sets, often in beautiful presentation boxes and including coins made of silver or gold, become instant collector's items, telling the story of modern South Africa's proudest moments. They show that coin collecting isn't just about the past, it's about capturing history as it happens. So, after all this, why should you, sitting in America or anywhere else in the world, care about South African coins? It's a fair question. The answer is that these coins offer a unique window into the story of a nation that has been at the center of world attention for centuries. The history of South Africa, of colonialism, of conflict, of the discovery of immense wealth, of the struggle against injustice, and of the quest for reconciliation, is a story that resonates globally. And every chapter of that story is stamped onto its currency. You can literally trace the rise and fall of empires and ideologies just by looking at a handful of coins. For collectors, South African coins are a dream. The country's history is so dynamic that it has produced an incredible variety of coins in a relatively short period. You have Dutch colonial issues, British imperial coins, independent Boer Republic currencies, Union of South Africa coins, and modern democratic rands. And that's not even mentioning the Krugerrand, a coin that fundamentally changed the way the world invests in gold. This variety creates a fascinating and challenging field for collectors. There are so many stories to uncover, so many rare pieces to hunt for. It's a hobby that's also a history lesson. In America, the connection is particularly strong because of the Krugerrand. For decades, it was the primary way for ordinary Americans to own gold. It became a household name. Even after it was banned during the sanctions era, its mystique only grew. When American investors think of gold coins, the Krugerrand is often the first one that comes to mind. This has created a lasting awareness and interest in South African numismatics. It's an entry point that can lead people to discover the country's richer and more complex monetary history, from the Burger's Pond to the Mandela R5 coin. Ultimately, coins are about connection. For South Africans living abroad, a simple springbok on a 1 rand coin can be a powerful reminder of home, a tangible link to their identity and heritage. For history lovers, they are artifacts that tell a story more powerfully than many textbooks can. And for the rest of us, they are a lesson in how something so small can carry so much weight. The weight of gold, the weight of history, and the weight of a nation's soul. The story of South African coins is still being written, with every new design and every new commemorative issue. It's a story that's as valuable as gold and as rich as the country itself.